Hi, this is Alan Perkins. Welcome back to the Perkins Podcast. I'm from Horns Digest through the Scout Network. Don't forget to check out Horns Digest, where Chip Brown has 25 years of experience covering UT athletics, and be sure to follow me on Twitter as well at Alan Perkins HD. And I've also created a YouTube channel. If you just type in Alan Perkins HD into the YouTube search bar, then you'll see my name, and then you can go to my channel. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. So this is part 2 of the Perkins podcast today. That includes a clock management discussion. So if you didn't listen to part 1, you'll need to, because there's a lot of background information on that. So just check that out from earlier today, posted on Sunday. So I'm going to let my dad talk about the subject, since I talked for 15 minutes straight. And so basically what I wanted him to do was talk about the pros and cons of Texas either taking too much time or taking not enough time, and the fact that they were behind the whole game, and when they scored to go up 33-32 on this last touchdown drive, that was the first lead they had in the game. So he was talking about how that was kind of part of it, that they were behind the whole game and they were just so desperate to grab a lead that maybe they weren't concerned about any of the other stuff that I had discussed. So I'm going to go ahead and let him talk about that.
Well, I remember that when that last drive that Texas was making, when that drive happened, that once we got down there close to, I don't know, their 30-yard line or 20-yard line somewhere, I remember our living room was full of people. We were watching the game, and you were closest to the TV, and I remember you screaming at the TV to, for them to take more time, to eat up more time, because they'd driven right down the field. I mean, obviously Texas Tech's defense at that time still wasn't that good. I mean, they were not a good defense.
They were ranked 75th that year in points per game allowed.
And so it looked like finally our offense was coming together, and their defense was performing to the low expectations. And so it looked like, we were going to score. And I remember you being very angry that they weren't bleeding the clock more and weren't taking it down to like 5 seconds on the play clock. And I argued with you then. I said, well, look, we've been behind the whole game. These guys, they want to get the lead. They're not worried about time. They're worried about getting the lead. They want to strike while the iron is hot. I mean, here they finally got some momentum. They're finally playing like the Texas offense should play, and they're not worrying about a secondary. The time was kind of a secondary consideration. With hindsight, it does seem to me that they should have, tried to bleed the clock more. I mean, I'm very much an advocate. I understand the hurry-up offense and going quickly and all that stuff, and there are times that you should do that. But there are other times that you should bleed the clock, and Bill Snyder had done it for years, year in and year out at Kansas State, and he's done it game in and game out over there. If you notice the game that they played against us this year, they ate up practically the whole first half. I mean, they had the ball practically the whole first half. So there's a lot to be said for that. I don't know, looking back on it, it does seem to me that, Texas, they had played, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 ranked opponents this was like the 4th or 5th game against a ranked opponent.
They played 4 games in a row where the opponent was ranked 11th or better. So they started off with Oklahoma, and then they played Missouri, and then they played Oklahoma State, and then they played Tech. I can't remember if I've got the Oklahoma State and Missouri out of order, but Tech was ranked 7th, Oklahoma State was ranked 6th, Missouri was ranked 11th, and OU was ranked 1 when they played them. Right. And so they played 4 straight games against those teams, and I don't remember the exact stat, but I'm 99% sure that the stat was that if Texas would have beaten Texas Tech in that game, that would have been the greatest run against ranked opponents in 50 years, or maybe even more, when you took into consideration what each team was ranked at the point that they played them. It would have been the greatest 4-week run in literally 50 years, if not more. So the schedule makers were definitely not kind, and it wasn't as if Oklahoma State with Zach Robinson, and Texas Tech with Graham Harrell and Crabtree, and Oklahoma with Sam Bradford and DeMarco Murray, and Missouri with Chase Daniel. It's not as if those teams were a surprise that year, and Texas had to play those teams 4 games in a row. The only thing that was a positive for that was that Texas got to play the Oklahoma game in a neutral site, so that wasn't away. It was at least a neutral site, and they got to play Oklahoma State and Missouri at home. Tech was the only road game, but Tech was the road game at the end of those 4 games. And then right after that, Texas played Kansas and Baylor, who were both not good in 2008, and Colorado was the game in front of the Oklahoma game. So obviously the schedule makers could have squeezed one of those games in between one of those 4 consecutive weeks, so that was kind of a surprising schedule. Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that they had played at least 3 weeks against ranked opponents.
3 weeks in a row.
The fourth, and this was the 4th one.
Yep.
In the top 11.
Right.
And
the other 3 were in the top 7.
Yeah. And the thing is that, you just don't, that doesn't happen to you that often. So, the Texas team started off very slow. I think they were pretty worn out after playing all those really good teams.
Sure.
And Texas Tech was a very good team that year as well.
That was their best team ever, probably.
Yeah. And, I think that, I think Texas coming to play Texas Tech, even out there in Lubbock, I think, Texas is kind of inclined to think, well, they're not that good. We beat them year in and year out.
Sure.
It's not like Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma, I don't care what the year is, you're always going to have to be up for the Oklahoma game. I don't care what the deal is.
Sure.
And you're always going to have to be up, if we were still playing A&M, you always have to be up for that game because A&M is definitely going to be up for us.
Sure.
And so we do tend to sort of overlook Texas Tech, and I think maybe that's what had happened. Maybe they were at the end of a 4-week string where they were just kind of worn out and played out. And
Lubbock's always a tough place to play.
It is, and especially at night, on Saturday night up there, things happen badly for Texas. That's where James Street got put in. That's what ended the reign of Bill Bradley as the starting quarterback for Texas. Was in that game up in Texas Tech, which was not televised back in 1968.
Did not know that.
Yeah, it was at the second half. James Street came into quarterback, and that's when they started doing the triple wishbone, the triple option, and everything.
That worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah. And so strange things happen up there on Saturday nights in Lubbock. So the thing is that, at any rate, I think our guys were pretty played out, and they kind of let their guard down. They got way behind, but then they did come back. So I do kind of understand them trying to score, but I do remember you screaming at the TV saying, go ahead and let them, bleed the clock, use the clock. And if they had maybe stopped to think of it. And Mac Brown also said that he was screaming from the sidelines to Colt McCoy, use up the clock, don't snap it so quickly.
Let me interrupt you real quick on that. I noticed also that, like I said, when I recapped this in part 1, when I started analyzing how much time Texas was running off was once Texas got to the 30. Texas ran 6 plays from once they got to the 30. It took them 6 plays to get in the end zone. 2 different times a Tech player got injured, and there were 2 different injury timeouts, and there was no discussion on the first one, at least shown on the camera, and the second one, it was about a 5-second discussion. So Mac might have said, or he very well might have been yelling at Colt to run down the clock, but there were 2 injury timeouts where Mac could have had a discussion with Colt, and Texas also had 2 timeouts throughout this entire situation, to where if Mac was so concerned about it, then he had essentially 4 opportunities to do something about it, and obviously didn't. So.
Well, but I mean, he's not going to call a timeout when he wants the time to be consumed. So
right, but you could do one of 2 things. A, first of all, there were 2 injury timeouts that weren't going to stop the clock; they were just stopping the clock momentarily, and then the refs blew the whistle to start the clock again, and there was 30 seconds to have a conversation right there, which obviously didn't happen. And then secondly, yeah, of course you don't want to use the timeouts, because if you're taking the strategy of we want to bleed the clock, then you don't want to call a timeout. But you could run the play clock all the way down to 1 and say, Colt, just run this all the way down to 1 or 5 seconds or whatever, and I'm going to call a timeout, and then I want to talk to you about this. They could have done that. So there was opportunity to talk it over, so that's not an excuse to me.
Yeah, all that I'm saying is I think their primary consideration there was we need to score, we need to take the lead. We've been behind the whole game. I mean, from minute one or whatever it was when Texas Tech scored originally and went up 19-0. We were always trailing in that game. I think Texas was so desperate to get the lead that was their primary focus. They weren't really focusing on the time. Had they used up more time, Texas Tech obviously can score at any time.
Right.
We needed to use up more time. It was obviously too much. We gave them too much time. 1:29, I think, is
right.
What you said.
And one timeout.
And when they finished, there was 1 second left when Crabtree scored.
And their kicker was bad that year too.
Yeah.
Texas Tech's kicker was not good.
So it was, I don't know. It would have been, when I started thinking about it, it would have been a lot better if Cole would have realized, okay, we do need to. We're already down here on the 30 or the 25 or the 20. We are going to score. Let's go ahead and eat up the time because that's your friend against Tech, and you can make the argument. Well, he didn't know for sure that we were going to score. Well, that's true. But if we didn't score and they intercepted the ball or we fumbled or somehow or other lost possession of it, then that was going to be the ball game anyway. So why not eat up the time? So.
Right, and then,
but I just think, I do think that, I think the problem was that the main thing was the necessity to score just was such an overpowering consideration that nobody stopped to think about, let's eat up the time too.
Right, and the other thing that can be said too is being, again, if I'm being overly critical of my criticism, I guess I could say that even when Texas gets to the 30 of Texas Tech, even then you're still kind of a little bit far away. So, but there was a second when Texas got to the 12-yard line, and or when they got to the 4-yard line of Tech, where they snapped the ball with 17 seconds left on the play clock, and they snapped the ball with 21 seconds left on the play clock when they got to the Tech 4 on 2nd and goal.
Yeah.
So even if you look at just those two, that's 38 seconds right there, where you're close enough at the 12 or 4. Where you can have an argument about that, even if you want to throw out starting at the 30, that's still too risky. And again, when it's 2nd and 2 from the Texas Tech 12, there's 2 minutes and 34 seconds left at that point.
Yeah.
And Texas still has both of their timeouts that they never used. So if they would have gotten down to say 30 seconds or something where it's getting too close, okay, you can use your timeouts there if you realize, okay, maybe as a team, this is cutting it too close.
Well, of course, all of that being said, the point of the matter also is that that one thing, though, did not determine the game because once Texas Tech got the ball and they started coming down, you remember that they threw what was a certain interception.
Right, the ball got deflected and then Gideon wasn't able to come up with the catch.
Yeah, Gideon caught. I mean, he had the ball in two hands. I mean, it was the end of the game. Everybody in our living room jumped up. Everything, and then they see that the ball fell down. I mean, if he holds onto the ball, that's the ball game.
Sure, or 50 other plays in that game. So it's definitely being very nitpicky and really
an armchair quarterback.
Right, but at the same time, as you said, as you confirmed, I was calling for it during the game, and then not only that, that's why coaches get paid billions of dollars, and you don't have that conversation in the middle of that game. You have that conversation in the summer. Or in August about what are we going to do in these situations, and then you're already prepared to say this is how we're going to handle this.
But I mean, even though the training is there and they say, okay, this way we're going to do it, that doesn't mean that in the event itself that you're actually able to remember. Oh yeah, I need to eat up the clock.
Sure. I'm saying it from a vacuum from my couch, so it's way different than after you've been hit. You've been hit around for 4 quarters, knocked around. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just you got to take the consideration. You got to look at it from their point of view.
For sure,
like you say, being tackled for 4 quarters and and being behind all 4 quarters. It turned out to be something that if we would have used a little bit more time, we would have won the game because they score with 1 second left.
Right.
Even if if they would have been with a shorter time, maybe they would have used their timeout. But still, I think we probably would have won the game.
All right. So thank you for listening to the Perkins podcast with my father, Bob Perkins, and myself, Alan Perkins. And again, make sure to check out Horns Digest and myself at Alan Perkins HD on Twitter and at YouTube. And you'll have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening.
All right. See you later.